Well, I mean, the search for creativity, I guess that's the point. Let's hope it never ends, right? Because when you're searching for it, you're always encouraged to build new content, right? It's always the way I see it is like creativity is therapy. It's you using stories and narratives to find meaning in our lives and share that meaning with other people. And going back to your comment, I have a follow up, which is, what do you think in Passiflora is for you Canadian, and what do you think is Brazilian? Or, I mean, could be even other references. I'm just curious, like when you were coming together with that, and now that you see the result, you're like, this is very much on point with what I was aiming for, and it reflects that aspect of culture. This, something else is very different. Does that come to mind, or?
You mean in the language or visually?
You choose. I mean, it
Oh,
could be all the way
okay.
from the lines, could be to the frames, the shots,
I th-
colors.
I think the very beginning of it is very not necessarily Latin American, but it's definitely a different language from what North American people are expecting. And just for whoever haven't seen the film, we start with a 1:1 aspect ratio, so it's literally a square. And every single character is filmed from their backs, so we don't see their faces until they enter the club, and that's when we open the aspect ratio. I don't think people are very used to seeing those type of things, so that is definitely like an odd to like a different language in a way. But visually speaking, I had this reference from the beginning that the film would have two main colors, blue and yellow. Blue is for Canada, yellow is for Brazil. So every single exterior scene is very, very blue, and every interior scene at the club is very, very yellow. So the whole point, I talked to my cinematographer, Agustin Liro, talked to the characters. As soon as they entered the club, that's Brazil. That's not Canada anymore. So that's why, like everyone who's outside at the exterior scenes, they're all wearing jackets. As soon as they're inside, they all take their jackets off. The club, my production designer Tai Lasso, she created these walls of fabric that she handmade um, to kind of emulate the tropical jungle in a way. So as soon as you enter the club, the music is different. The way that the people act there, it's different. The walls are different. Everything is different to come to this idea that you're entering a different country. In this case, Brazil. Um, yeah, yeah.
No, I think that's super cool. It reminds me of specific scenes like you mentioned the fabric and the curtains. It's like the foliage when you're pushing the leaves aside. Also, when you mentioned I just thought immediately of like there's a scene with the bar and you see just like the glass lighting, and I'm like, wow, that was cool. So you see lots of different references, and I even the another scene where the coat is removed, and you also see that exactly what you just described of like it's even metaphorically a representation of the heat, and then the heat as in like the physical, the air temperature, but also the way that people are interacting and the warmth of that community as well. Super, super, super cool. Any more questions? Does anyone have? Oh, nice.
I was just wondering about how this choice of magical realism, talking about going from sci-fi and then making the very clear delineation from magical realism and surrealism, and being very clear about where you're playing. What does that allow you to do, and how does that fit in with what you're trying to say? So basically, I guess why magical realism, and what tools does that give you?
I think uh, it is just a return to home in a way. I think it just because I grew up listening to a lot of folklore and a lot of like urban legends, and then I was a 90s kid, so I grew up with the whole like boom of the internet. So then you all of a sudden you have all these legends, folklore based, and all of a sudden you have these internet based folklore and legends and all of that. So this aspect of like storytelling is very, very big in me and my family. So I think going back to magical realism is just a way of me to go back to that little Gabriel who thought about stories and listening to stories. I think I just do it for myself. I don't really do it for anyone else. And it's just a way of me to dive back into that mindset where life was not as complicated as it is right now, and it's just like you have access to creativity, like infinite creativity in a way. So I think that's why I go back to magical realism, because I honestly I wasn't as familiar with magical realism a couple years ago, just because to me that was just my reality. And then I discovered, like, oh, people give a name to this. There is actually like a lot of books about it, like studies about it, and all of that. So I think it's a way to like formally go back to a childhood place. Yeah.
I mean, to that end, I'm also curious to hear, because I mean, also being born and raised in Brazil, for a long, long time, I always got the sense that like folklore was, in many cases, pushed away as like this very traditional, and like you would even have some, I don't know, for example, TV shows that would represent the folklore, but it wouldn't really dive too deep. And what you're doing is really like almost like reinventing slash putting your own take on it, which is uh, just a revitalizing it, you know, making it updated and modern. So is that something I'm curious to hear? Because I asked before, like the reception from the audience, but do you think people in Brazil, where did they watch the movie, or have they seen this this progression of your work? Do they have any thoughts, or maybe family, friends, etc.? Any specific thoughts about that? If you'd like to share, of course.
Yeah. We haven't had screenings in Brazil yet. Just friends and family who I sent the link of the film. The reception is good, but the whole thing you were mentioning about like a reinventing folklore in a modern take, I don't know. That's very ambitious, and I feel very intimidated by that. But I mean, I would like to think that in the future I could maybe be um, a voice proposing something like that. I don't know if I'm there yet. Again, I'm not a positive person, um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited. I think this journey just really started, creatively speaking. I would love to be considered like this new wave of Brazilian or Brazilian Canadian filmmakers, if you will. Um, I Most of my production has happened here, so I don't know if a lot of people from Brazil would be like following every single milestone. Um, but yeah, yeah, I hope that things move forward and I can become like this new one of the new voices, definitely. Yeah. Does this answer your question?
Yes, 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 yes. It does, because I think you already are one of these. I mean, nothing stops you from being one of these new voices. You already are this new voice. And we are always reinventing, because that's what we do when we create stories, when we process information. We absorb and then we make it our own, because it's our experiences plus what we've just absorbed. So uh, in my opinion, you've already done it and you're doing it, and you're going to keep growing and making it on a perhaps a bigger platform, a bigger scale, a bigger stage. But it's not going to be new as a process, in my opinion. Like you've already done it, you're going to keep doing it because apparently it's in your DNA, right? So that's really cool. We have time for one last question. I mean, I have several, but okay, then in the meantime, if anyone has any questions at any point, just lift your hand. No worries. But again, this journey is a very rewarding one in the sense of being able to share with the world your story. But what advice would you give? You mentioned like representing, hoping to represent, which I believe you already do, but this new wave, this new generation, or Brazilian filmmakers, Canadian Brazilian filmmakers. What kind of advice would you have for someone treading a similar path, or someone who also has similar ambitions?
It is tough when people ask me that because I feel like I'm still in the middle of the process, so I don't have a lot of tips to give. But I think the main tip that I heard as soon as I got here, and that I keep echoing it all the time, is just find your tribe. Find people who think like you or somewhat like you, and uh, just go and do stuff. Get your phone, get a small camera, uh, experiment with language, experiment with like low quality cameras, and just do something over the weekend. And then one thing will take you to another place and to meet another person, and eventually you're going to be in a festival, and then things go from there. So this whole romanticized idea that like, oh, someone's going to watch my film and then they're going to take me everywhere, like this is not going to happen. You have to do it. So just keep practicing and find people who think like you, and eventually you create a body of work that will speak for itself. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I do think that it's a continuous process, right? It's not just about making the movie and, like you said, hoping it'll magically, although there is magical realism in what you do, the reality of it is if you just make the movie, it still needs to be seen by people, right? So that is a big challenge, a big struggle that all filmmakers and all content creators go through. What you mentioned about the experimental language, I thought that was super cool because at the very beginning, as you mentioned, the one by one shot, that is very social media, that is very vertical filmmaking, right? Which is a sign of the time we live in with by using our phones to just record vertical portrait content. So that's super cool. And finding your tribe, totally agree. I think that at the end of the day, yes, we're looking for people who share the same values and who believe in the same things. And I do think that even the movie is a very good representation of that. So again, it's just magical realism on screen, off screen, and finding your tribe on screen, off screen. And how can people stay in touch and keep up with what you're up to?
Yeah, most of my filmmaking work, I just put it on Instagram. So it's at C3PGabs. It's a Star Wars reference. C3PGABS. Yeah, most of my stuff is over there. I tend to post quite a lot. And I'm planning to release a bunch of other micro shorts that I've been doing recently. So everything's going to be there. So, yeah. In total, with Passiflora was my 7th short. Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm doing some micro ones just for social media and writing another one for next year. Yes.
And if so, you mentioned for people who want to watch, they can follow you. But then, are there any future screenings planned or anything like that?
For Passiflora, we're also playing at the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. So we have another screening this Friday at the International Village. And I think this is going to be our last local screening for a little bit because we screen at every single local festival. So yeah, but if you go either on Instagram at Passiflora_short, you can see all of our screenings and wherever we're going to be playing next. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, that brings our panel to a close. Round of applause for Gabriel. Woo! Thank you so much for joining us at this Peliplat Spotlight, and we'll see you next time. Oh, which next time means tomorrow. We have a panel happening at this exact same time, and it's going to be about emerging filmmakers with Federica being our moderator. So look forward to seeing you there.